Well, hi folks, here we are again, Lior and myself. We're here at the David Lee Sound Gallery here at Monash University Clayton campus. And we've got a few questions about our set. The first one's from Eliza O, and she wants to know how we met and when did we start playing together. So my recollection of that is that Lee has a cousin called Ruben, and Ruben happens to be my manager. And I had the opportunity to do a series of, and still do, hopefully in the future, an opportunity to do concerts at a beautiful venue in the Adelaide Hills called ARIA. And I did a series with different vocalists. And I said to Ruben, how about Lior? Do you think he'd be into it? And luckily, very luckily for me, he agreed to do it. So I think our very first gig was actually in Hobart.
Yeah, it was in the Hobart Spiegeltent, that's right.
Yeah. And hi to anyone down there in Hobart who happens to be listening. Love you guys. So yeah, I guess that's the answer, right?
Correct.
Thanks, Eliza.
Got a question from Yuko who asks, how important is music to you during the lockdown? Well, music is always important. For me, and you know, for I suppose all musicians, it's a beautiful escapism, and during a lockdown, I suppose you need more moments of beautiful escape because we don't have that human connection that we so love. So it might be more important than ever.
Oh, here's a curly one. Jake G wants to know if globalization is good for music.
What a great question.
That's a great question. I think, I think it is great for music because music is a kind of international language. I think music really allows people from different cultures to have a conversation which is not prejudiced by words necessarily. And as we all know, words can do as much harm as good. But music is one of those things which is a fantastic place to meet people and work with people in all kinds of interesting and very inspiring ways, don't you think?
Definitely, and I think this is a really interesting time, or the last decade, I suppose, because in a way, musicians have gone back to becoming court musicians, but whereas once, a couple of 100 years ago, musicians were court musicians and that court was dictated by geography, now it's dictated by taste because you have your audience and there are no geographical limits to that. They can be accessed anywhere. So we have our little communities on a global scale.
I think the next one's for you, Lee.
Sneaky B wants to know, how would you describe your styles and influences? Look, I think at its essence, probably there's that core thread of folk, because folk is all about lyrics and the way that melody and lyric interact. And I draw my biggest source of inspiration from that golden era of the late 60s and early 70s, which I think held some of the most beautiful songs ever written. So I love branching out. I've branched out into all sorts of genres, and this also represents a musical branch out for me, but I think there's a core thread of folk that runs through everything that I do.
Yeah, and I mean some of the influences, like, well, you talked about Randy Newman, but James Taylor. I mean, there's some really extraordinary.
James Taylor and those great songwriters, and also the great
Paul
bands
Simon.
of that era. Yeah, Led Zeppelin and the Beatles.
Yeah,
just incredible music.
Yeah, the Beatles are quite good.
Yeah, they got a big future ahead of them, I think, once people find out about them.
It's spelled B-E-A-T. That's funny, right? Mandy wants to know which 3 songs you'd add to the Great Australian Songbook. Wow. Oof. Well, I'll add one.
You take it.
Okay, well, a song that I've been playing quite a bit with Kate Severano is the wonderful song by the Divinals. Well, really, Chrissy Amphlett made this song such an important statement. The song I Touch Myself, I think there's a really extraordinary, beautiful song with great depth. So that's one I'd put in. Mm-hmm. I'd have to put an AC/DC song in. I'd have to probably, I think probably A Long Way to the Top. Or one of those. I mean, there's like a whole genre of AC/DC songs which I think are incredible. But anyway, over to you.
That's probably already in the Great Australian Songbook, but I'll add one. I think Flame Trees by Cold Chisel. I just think that lyric is my favourite Don Walker lyric and gets me every time. So I think that might be one of, if not the greatest Australian song written. Jude asks, what are some of the ways you're staying creative and connecting with other artists at the moment? Well, this is certainly one of them. Paul?
Well, you know, the arts community has taken an incredible hit, and there's a lot of people out there who are in great need. So one of the ways that you know, we connect is just by talking to each other, and I think staying in touch with people is very, very important right now. Sometimes a conversation can be really quite, you know, something which saves people in a way. So that's a really important way to reach out and just make sure that people are okay. On a more practical level, yes, using technology in order to be able to have musical conversations is a really fascinating thing, which a lot of people are now totally getting on board with. And I think that, you know, that's going to really have a huge effect on the way that music is made into the future. I think we're finding that you know, being separate is not necessarily an impediment to making music together. And you know, there are still technical issues with getting you know, the rights, well, the immediacy of the musical experience, but we're getting there, you know, very, very quickly at the moment. So all sorts of ways.
Anita wants to say, I had a ticket to see you at WGAC. I'd been so disappointed. Sorry, the text keeps changing on me, but understood that it had to be cancelled. Thank you so much for doing tonight. Oh, it's such a pleasure, Anita. Thank you. I'm glad we could make this happen, and I hope to be back there in a few months' time. That's being optimistic, but I hope so.
Yeah, we're all hoping that you know, that the scene opens up again as soon as it's safe, and no one can really predict when that will be. But you know, we're hanging in there. Well, I think that might be it.
Yeah, thank you. So we might wrap that up.
Thank you all very much for listening and tuning in. And don't forget, there'll be many more great artists coming at us every Wednesday night. And here at the David Lee Sound Gallery, Monash University. That's all. It's been a real pleasure playing with Lior, always is. And see you next
Paul.
week. Well, you won't see me next week, but I'll be certainly watching next week.
We would like to thank you and everyone involved in this experience. For more on the Sound Gallery sessions, visit monash.edu/mlive.